What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode. On today's video, we are going to dig into suspension, brakes, and a few other surprises I've got for you. As the title of the video is Suspension Overload, we are going to be nerding out on all of the suspension and brake components that are going into the car. So I need to reinstall all of the suspension and brakes and also show you guys a bunch of new parts that I've got going in the car. So let's get right to it. Okay, so going back to the first episode of the season, you might remember I removed all of the suspension and the factory front rear subframes off the car. I'm sure some of you might have guessed back then and by now why I removed the subframes from the car. I'm going to share that with you right now as I move the camera down, 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 and here you have it. Some brand new TSS Fab tubular subframes, more specifically their front GD subframe and their rear geometry correction kit, which is a rear subframe and rear T-bar. But of course I can't install these on the car bare metal, so let's do something about that. Alright, that looks a hell of a lot better. Big shout out to Metal Coaters for powder coating these subframes for me. As always, they do amazing work over there. But first thing I'm going to do is install the front subframe. And again, that is for a Subaru GD chassis and is set up for running a 2015 STI steering rack, which is what I currently have. So I'm going to get this subframe installed on the car and come right back to you guys. Alright, that's going to do it for installing the front subframe on the car. It fits perfectly and looks absolutely amazing. Let's get the rear subframe installed into the car and jump into what's next. Alright, so got the rear subframe and T-bar installed in the back of the car. Now for some reason the kit came with a bunch of Imperial coarse thread bolts. I don't know why, I don't really like mixing matching bolts on the car. For now I put them in just to get the installation finished, but somewhere down the road I'll end up switching everything to a metric fine thread. Just something to keep in mind if any of you guys are planning to do subframes down the road. I would definitely look into purchasing separate metric fine thread bolts. But now let's move on to installing the rear diff. Now I figured while I have it out of the car, I might as well talk about it a little bit. So this is a Subaru R180 diff, and as you can see right away, I'm running Cusco's billet aluminum rear diff cover, and this is basically just give you increased oil capacity and increased cooling. I'm also going to be installing a diff cooler pump in the very near future, so you've got these additional fittings here, which is really nice to have if you want to install a diff cooler. And inside of this diff, I am running Cusco's RS 1.5 way LSD, or limited slip differential. Which has made a huge difference for me sliding the car around. Absolutely love the difference, noticed it right away. So enough talking, let's get this rear diff installed back in the car. Alright, got the rear diff mounted into the subframe. I think something happened with the GoPro as usual, but here it is, all mounted onto the subframe. Starting to come together here. Alright, so now that the rear diff is mounted into the subframe, I'm going to go ahead and install the one-piece carbon fiber drive shaft back in the car and also reinstall the Cusco chassis braces. Let's get it done. Alright, so I definitely named this video Suspension Overload for a reason, because we're really getting into it now. Now I've got my coilovers out here on the bench, and I figured now would be the perfect time to show you guys what I'm running on the car and give you a little bit of an idea of what's going on here. So I am running Cusco's 03X competition coilovers. And these coilovers feature a inverted strut monotube design. They also feature a 24-way damper adjustment on the external reservoir here. You can see you've got your high speed and low speed compression. And then down here on the bottom of the coilover, you have your rebound adjustment. They also feature a pillow ball top mount and then also your camber adjustment as well on the top. And of course, once everything's assembled, you've got your upright bracket here that threads onto the sleeve of the coilover here. And then of course, the further up you go, the lower the car goes, and obviously the opposite direction you go, the higher the car goes. So the reason I've got everything apart right now is I'm cleaning everything up, and I'm also changing the spring rate on the car. After going to Dirtfish Rally School a couple times, shout out to Dirtfish, I learned a whole bunch of things on weight transfer and vehicle setup, and I thought, you know what, probably be a good idea to go with a little bit of a softer setup on my car, as I thought it was pretty firm previously. So before, I was running 10K springs in the front and 8K springs in the rear. And now I'm going to be going down to an 8K setup in the front, 6K in the rear. So what I need to do is pull the 8K springs out of the rear coilovers. I'm going to move them over here to the front. And then I've got a brand new set of 6K springs that I'll install into the rear. But I guess there's not much left to say. I'm going to get these coilovers cleaned up, get everything switched around, and get them installed back in the car. Moving right along to the rest of the suspension components here. We'll start here in the rear. More Cusco products, of course. I have their rear lower control arms and their rear lateral link kit. Up here in the front, I have a set of modified OEM STI lower control arms, which feature the MSI Motorsport anti-lift kit, and also have these spherical rod end heim joints, which we welded to the lower control arms. And this just stiffens everything up, and obviously the adjustment between everything combined here really gives you the ability to really dial in your suspension setup. So let's get these installed onto the car, and I can't wait to show you guys what I've got next. Alright, so now that most of the suspension components are installed on the car, we can finally move on to installing the uprights and the brakes. But let me show you what I have right over here. A brand new set of Wisefab front and rear uprights for the car. Now, Wisefab is well known in the drifting community for making some serious high quality suspension components. I was actually looking on the internet trying to find some uprights for the car, and they're super expensive. Most of them are all CNC billet aluminum, and they're not cheap by any means. And randomly I went to go check out Wisefab's website and was in absolute shock when I see that they had this kit available for the car. Now again, these might not be billet aluminum CNC machine, but for what you get, these are definitely super high quality and the most cost affordable uprights available on the market. All right, let's talk about the front uprights here first. As I said, they are not CNC machine billet aluminum, but they are still very, very light. Almost 5 pounds lighter than the OEM upright. And that would be 5 pounds of unsprung weight, which is huge when it comes to weight savings. Another cool thing about these uprights is they're actually interchangeable between Subaru Impreza GC, GD, and GR platform, and I believe it'll also fit certain year Foresters as well. Another cool thing is you can actually use them on either a WRX or an STI simply by swapping out these adapter plates and mounting your wheel bearing hub assembly directly to the upright. They are 50mm roll center corrected, so basically if you've lowered your car or running an aggressive suspension setup, this will bring your roll center, your caster, and your bump steer back into proper alignment. They also include these wheel speed sensor adapters, depending on what type of wheel speed sensor you plan on using with your car. They also include this one-piece steering arm, which replaces your inner and outer tie rod end and runs a spherical rod end heim joint on the end. And that, in combination with the position of this bracket, I'm guessing, and the spacing of these washers here, you can actually increase the steering ratio on the car. So since I am running a 15 STI steering rack, I've already dropped the ratio from 15:1 down to 13:1 on my car. I don't know the exact figures of what this will drop it to, but either way, faster steering is always better. And again, these are just super high quality parts. Even looking at the inside here, you can see how these are all laser cut steel plates, all welded together and just super high quality. All right, let's talk about the rear uprights now. Now, right off the bat, you don't get the same amount of weight savings as you do from the front, but you still get just over 2 pounds in weight savings. And again, that would be 2 pounds of unsprung weight. So either way, you're still saving a lot of weight when it comes to installing this kit on the car. And again, these are also 50mm roll center corrected, just like the front, and also will fit a Subaru Impreza GC GD platform, certain year Foresters, and interchangeable between the WRX and STI depending on the bearing that you install. Another really cool thing that I like about these uprights that they've done is they've relocated the brake caliper mounting brackets directly to the upright. The OEM uprights have a steel backing plate that's actually mounted to the upright, and just by doing this, it's going to make everything a lot more stiffer and better overall. Now, if you do plan on reusing your factory parking brake, you do have to modify that OEM dust shield by cutting off the outer 2-inch diameter, and that'll bolt directly to the new upright. You can see here too, it also includes the wheel speed sensor bracket adapters. And another cool thing they've done is also removed the factory urethane bushing and gone to a spherical bearing. And that's just going to stiffen up your suspension and overall make the car handle even better. All right, jumping back to the front uprights, I've already gone ahead and pre-assembled one of the uprights so I could give you guys a little comparison between the two. So looking at the OEM upright, you can see here we've got the lower ball joint, bearing hub assembly, and my AP Racing brake caliper brackets bolted on. To move this bracket onto the new Y-sub assembly, thankfully I didn't have to modify the upright in any way. It fit right on. The only thing I needed to do was get some longer bolts, as the bolts I previously used were not long enough. As you can see here, the thickness of the upright isn't very thick compared to the Y-Fab version. So I had to get some longer bolts there. Other than that, everything was pretty much straight swap over. Everything fit real nice. Let's get these installed. Alright, got the Y-Fab uprights installed in the front. Everything fits perfectly. You can see here we got the inner tie rod, which connects to the upright with these washers, and where you place the washers changes your bump steer angle, and also positioning is different between the GD and GR platform. And you can see here I've got my brake caliper and the brake caliper bracket just loosely sitting there right now. I don't think I've really talked too much about my brakes in the past, especially in the video. But in the front here, I am running the AP Racing Pro 5000R calipers. They are 6-piston, as you can see on the inside of the caliper. And again, in order to get these fitted to the car, I had to have an engineer custom design all the brackets and hats and everything to make this all work. So these are the calipers up front. These are the 2-piece rotors right here. So this is, again, a custom hat that was machined. And then I'm running the AP Racing iron disc rings. And right now, while I'm doing all this, I'm going to switch my brake pads out. I'm switching to a WinMax W5 competition metallic brake pad. But let's get everything else put together and put the rest of the car together. All right, so moving on to the rear uprights and show you a little bit of what's involved in order to make these new WiseFab uprights work on my cars. It's not going to be a straightforward bolt-on installation. Now the biggest reason for that is because of this huge CNC machine billet aluminum bracket that I had designed in order to fit the AP Racing brake calipers on the rear of the car. In order to make these work on the new WiseFab uprights, unfortunately I'm going to have to cut these brake caliper mounting brackets off of the WiseFab upright. At that point I'll take the uprights over to my buddy's shop who has a press. We'll press out the hub assembly, remove the wheel bearing. At that point we'll unbolt the brake caliper mounting bracket from the factory upright, move it over here to the WiseFab upright, press in a new wheel bearing, press in the wheel hub assembly, and that'll do it for making these new WiseFab uprights work on the rear of the car. But let me get these brackets cut off of these uprights, and maybe when I'm done I'll snap my fingers like that and everything will magically be done. Let's see what happens. Alright, and just like that, the brackets for the AP Racing brakes are bolted directly to the upright, and I also got the wheel bearing and hub assembly pressed in, and only left to do now is get these installed in the car. Alright, moving on to the rear brakes. So just like the front, I'm also running the AP Racing Pro 5000R Radical calipers. These are their CP9440 4-piston calipers. And you can see very similar design to the 6-piston calipers, just obviously 2 less pistons, but same Radical styling, all billet machined aluminum, nice and lightweight caliper. And for the rear discs, I am running 340mm by 28mm, again on these custom aluminum center hats. And with the exception, I am not running an internal parking brakes, and you can see here obviously there's nothing inside of the disc, just like the front, very similar design. So let's get these brakes installed on the car. Alright, so now that the brakes and suspension, everything's all mounted back on the car, there's only one thing left to do now, and that is to get the wheels mounted back on the car and get this car down on the ground. But speaking of wheels, I've got a brand new set of wheels and I'm going to show them to you right now. Okay, so here I have a set of fast FC08 flow-formed competition series wheels. Absolutely love the look of these wheels. It's got that classic rally car multi-spoke vibe. The specs on the wheels are 18 by 9.5 with a plus 38 offset. And I have a set of Westlake Sport RS 265 35/18 tires mounted to them. So if you've been following me for a while, you notice right away that these wheels aren't the same green that I've been running for like the last 10 years. And I just figured with the new WRC body kit, let's kick it old school and put a set of gold wheels back on the car. I had the wheels powder coated by metal coaters. They did an absolute fantastic job. I'll show you guys the back side of the wheel here, and really love the color and the finish. Everything turned out really well. Can't wait to see what these wheels are going to look like on the car, so let's get them mounted up. And that is going to do it to end today's suspension overload episode. It's so sick to finally see the car back on the ground after the last couple months installing the new WRC wide body kit on the car, getting all the suspension components back installed, the new WiseFab uprights, and the new Gold Fast FC08 wheels. The car just looks insane. Aside from the fact that it is two-tone black and blue right now, but I'll do something about that very soon. Now, while I was installing the wheels on the car, I also went ahead and set ride height on all 4 corners. The car is technically in WRC tarmac spec right now, which is a much lower ride height than, let's say, WRC gravel spec. If we go up here to the front of the car, you'll notice a huge amount of wheel gap between the bottom of the front fender to the top of the tire. But looks can be deceiving. The car is actually sitting about 4 inches lower than factory ride height right now. But again, because it does have the higher wheel arches on the WRC fenders here, it really throws off the look of how low the car truly is. If we go to the rear of the car here, you guys might remember a couple episodes back when I removed the factory quarter panels off the car with the previous WRC replica wide body kit that I had on the car. And I did a quick comparison by eyeballing with my fingers, and I said it was about 4 inches from the transition point to the bottom of the wheel arch. So we take that same 4-inch measurement, come down here to the new WRC quarter panels from the transition point, roughly come down here. That puts us on this line just above the lip of the rim. So theoretically, if I had the previous WRC replica kit still installed on the car at current ride height, I'd almost be tucking wheel in the back of the car, to give you an idea just how low the car truly is. But I wish you guys could see it in person. It looks insane. But that's going to do it for today's episode, guys. Thanks again for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel. You know the drill. And if you're not already, also subscribe to my Instagram. That's probably the best place to keep up to date with everything I'm doing to the car. And honestly, let's face it, by the time I get around to editing this video and uploading it to YouTube, it's probably going to be a whole year from now anyways. So thanks again, guys, for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode.